Okay, so tonight I thought we'd handle what some see as a bit of a hot potato. Maybe you guys and girls don't. What is Aiki? So it will mean different things to different people, and lots of people debate it. But I thought I would start by looking at somebody who does an immense amount of research on Aikido, Christopher Lee. You see him publish a lot of information on the internet, Facebook. He always goes to the source, and his research is impeccable. No doubt to it. I have no problem with that at all. And he's talking about a teacher called Sagawa, who wrote a book, The Principles of Aikibudo. And this is kind of the opening sentence from an article he wrote. I will share it with you, I think. You can then take the website if you want and go into this in a bit more detail. So I'm going on to the bold. Through the principles of Aiki, pacify and reconcile those threatening violence. Also, when the enemy has already attacked, likewise transform and change according to the attack of the enemy through the principles of fitting together key and achieve reconciliation. In his own words, Christopher's words there. This is somewhat abstract, but it states the fundamental principles of Aiki. So I'm going to bounce this back to you. So what do you think Aiki is? Who wants to open up? Let me offer you a choice then. Is it simply a way of blending with physical force so that there's no clash? It's a redirection, in other words, of your partner's physical capacity in some way. Or is it something deeper than that, something more about the human spirit, about harmony on a deep level with your fellow human beings, love and all that sort of stuff, peace and the like? Where do you sit on that spectrum? Or have you got somewhere else to go? Linda.
Okay, I'll be brave or stupid and go first.
Well done.
Good morning or evening. I see it as both the physical and the interpersonal or situational aspects, but I want to be clear that I don't see it as a force in the universe. Like, I don't think there is Aiki out there we can tap into. I'm using it in the sense of it's a word we use to refer to.
Sure. So it's a
non-resistance or blending, or yeah.
So it's like harmony, if you like. Harmony isn't a force as such; it's maybe a state.
Right. I often hear it discussed, and maybe I'm wrong, but I often hear it discussed as though it is like gravity, like it is a thing out there. And I think to me, it's the way I use it is as a term to describe how we physically or interpersonally connect, blend, work together, not clash like that. So nice. That's just my 2 cents. Wow, but I thought I'd throw that distinction out there about which way we're talking about it.
Well, firstly, you can talk about it in any way you want, because your views, you're entitled to your view as much as anybody else. But
exactly. But I mean, as we're talking, maybe be clear about which people mean, because there are people who study it and practice it as accessing a force that exists, I think.
Okay.
So if people are discussing it that way, great. And if they're, just talking about a descriptive word like harmony, then great also.
Yeah. So, I'm not the academic on the origins of Aikido in the same way you, Sean, are perhaps, and Christopher certainly is. But I always go back to the translation of the two words, the I and the ki. So for me, ki is the energy of the universe, or nature, if you want to describe it in that way, and I basically means harmony, or at least that's one way of viewing it. But I've read quite a bit that suggests there are different interpretations of what Aiki actually means. Sean, yes.
Yes, on that, I think that broadly for the community, of course, right, one can practice any which way you like, as long as you're not hurting people. But if we want to ask what O Sensei meant by Aiki, right, then one of the most important quotes, I think, is that which I'm going to paraphrase, he says that, you know, the Aiki of which I speak is fundamentally different from the Aiki of the past, right, from the Aiki of other traditions. And so, I mean, the term Aiki is, you know, millennia old, is very ancient. It's been used in a lot of different contexts to mean a lot of different things. And it absolutely does mean, in some contexts, this sort of fitting together, harmonizing with another, with another, sort of the blending of just ki in general, because of course, there's all sorts of different types of ki, right? There's not just one ki. But O Sensei here is distinguishing the Aiki of which he speaks from all of those others. And he's very clear in his lectures, I think, about the type of ki or the type of Aiki that he means. And it kind of gets back to this, right? We have the I and the ki, right? What ki is it that we're supposed to be concerned with? Well, it's the key of Dai I, the key of great love, right? The key of the Ichigen, the one source, right? Taka Amahara, the vast heart of Kami, right? All of these symbols that he uses for that vital emptiness from which everything is unfolding, that which does the unfolding of the changes and movements of the universe and of ourselves, right? That which from which we are unfolding, right? These all these symbols are for this thing. Su ame no minaku nushi no kami, right? Like that's the key that he cares about. And the I don't translate it as harmony, although I know a lot of people do. I think that the fundamental metaphor of the character is two things becoming one. So it's unity, unifying, right? Which is subtly different. And so the Aiki, as I interpret it, is the unifying with this Dai I, right? This fundamental key, right? Of Su, of, you know, now he is another symbol he uses, right? I mean, there's 400 symbols that he uses. It's unifying with that, out of which, right, things are supposed to be born, right? He talks about sort of giving birth to this and that out of this unity.
Okay, so on the mat, when we're being attacked, we're not supposed to be, I mean, in a way it is with loving compassion, because we're not really going to chop each other's heads off, but we're certainly giving the intent of a key that has nothing to do with love. It's one of violence, that we're supposed to be giving that intention. So how does that, how, you know, there's this on the person receiving the technique is kind of coming from a place of love. That was, if I'm taking your words correctly, there's an element of compassion for the other person and wanting to look after them. So how do we get this unity with this, you know, so with one love, one hate, how do we create this unity into love? Any thoughts?
I mean, I don't see it as a unity between you and your partner at all. I mean, O Sensei is full of quotes saying, you know, there is no partner, right? You know, in true Budo, there is no partner. Or he'll say, yeah, a partner's there, but really there's no partner, right? He says this over and over again. You know, when he describes Aiki, right? Aiki as misogi, or Aiki as the appearance or expression of take musu, right? Of generating or giving birth to or expressing bu, right? This is all being expressed from that love, or that vital emptiness from which we are unfolding. The unity right, that you're trying to effect is to become completely a pure expression of that love and vital emptiness, which is your own essence. Or another way he puts it, to build up that special part of yourself, which is kami, right? Your own essence. Like that's the goal. So
Okay.
the unifying is not between you and your partner, right? It's fully becoming as a pure expression of your own essence, your own unfolding essence, and nothing else. That's how he frames it as I read it.
Okay. So how are people understanding this? Are you following, Sean? Are there any questions you want to ask? No, you're all good? Marvellous. Anyone got anything else they would like to add? Or have we finished for the night?
Can I sort of follow on that? I'm with you on that one. I have concerns about this use of the term universe. I tend to think more in terms of this particular planet. I think the universe is a very big place, and we don't really know what's going on in other parts of it. I have to confess that I'm fairly heavily biased by Tai Chi. And in Tai Chi, there is this concept of a duality of force, one coming down on you in the form of gravity, and one coming up from the ground in the form of the spinning of the earth. And I've always thought of Aiki as a way of harmonizing sort of those two forces in your own body. So I would agree with you that it's really not to do with a partner.
Andrew, the word that springs to mind hearing you is balance. Finding a balance between these
Yes.
opposing forces.
Yeah. I mean, you harmonize these in your center, or as in Tai Chi, your Dantian. And that then becomes the source of your energy.
Okay. So when I'm practicing with a partner, it's very important, I think, technically, to have my center align with my partner's center.
Yeah.
And when I'm working with somebody, I do feel a sense of joining. If I feel separate to the person, then I'm just doing something to them. And to me, that's not Aikido. Might be the same shape, but it's not Aikido. It's only when I have this sense of being one with the other person that it is Aikido for me. So there's something in there that I can't actually explain why it works. It's just a feeling within me. And when I have that feeling, it seems to be very effective. And I can only generate that feeling when I'm feeling positive and kind about the other person. I can't generate it when I'm feeling angry or that I'm going to make this happen. So there is some sort of unification with the partner. The phrase I always use is turning two into one, and I feel that that's what's happened.
Yeah, but it's wider than that. You are becoming unified within yourself, and therefore you are becoming unified with the environment that you're in, and your partner is part of that environment. So there is a harmony, unification there as well.
Is it as simple as that? That if you give off positive vibes, you create positive vibes within your partner then?
Possibly, yeah.
Are you all thinking about that? Go on, John.
To put it in slightly different words, right? I mean, O Sensei says that the entire universe, each person is the form of Taka Amahara, the high plane of heaven, and that the unfolding, the changes of the universe are the breathing, the living, sort of the lived governance of kami. He speaks often about kami no keirin or kami no go keirin, right? Sort of the governance or the administration of kami. And you can think of this sort of as like a version of the natural laws, right? The governance of kami is what governs the unfolding changes of the universe, of yourself, how you unfold in time, how everything changes and whatnot.
Yep.
And he explains that that special part of yourself, which is kami, was made in accordance with kami no keirin, is made in accordance with the administration of kami. And so this whole, unify yourself with the motions of the universe, with the natural motions, right? The part of yourself which is already made in accordance with the administration of kami, which governs all of the natural motions, right? That's how you, right? That's how you unify with the movements of nature.
All right. So can I attempt to translate that, because kami doesn't really mean anything to me. It's just not my tradition, of course. So I don't believe in kami in the stone and kami in the trees and all this. But I do think there are universal laws which govern everything, and I feel that that's what he's talking about ultimately. It's about the universal forces that operate on us all, and we can't avoid them. And when we work with them, that's when we kind of become one with the universe. That's just my translation. I don't know if you're happy with that. Jamie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, hi. I can't say this whole time, but I really get to say every day. I stay for a little while. Two things. One is big and one is little, and which I think goes to something that I'm very tuned in to, which is sort of the microcosmic and the macrocosmic, shall we say? And we'll start with the macrocosmic. Saying, well, kind of can't deal with the whole big universe, at least our universe. I'm really into like exoplanets and is there life in other areas of the universe, and I love reading about it. And, it turns out our Milky Way galaxy is one of like probably billions of galaxies. There's billions of planets, and et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of hard to even expand your mind enough to the whole universe. We're one universe within the whole big universe, but it's called universe. It's like this one, I believe we need to be, and don't steal it, it's in my book about versing ourselves in the universe, that there really is this oneness. And I think astrophysicists and all are finding that the laws, at least, that govern, gravity, et cetera, but how everything is held together and what everything's made of, seem to hold within our universe and within the whole universe. It's a universe, which is really quite extraordinary to think about. So I'm going to get now really microcosmic. And you guys can't see, but I'm at home. I'm in Palm Springs, so I'm staying with some friends. You got to see this little dog. She is such a doll. This is Kismet. She's 10 pounds. Look at her. And so not only is she a doll, she's blind. And so, the feeling of oneness, with this little blind little doll here is incredible. It's like, any cute little dog kind of inspires that, certainly in me. She's blind, she's just so tender and so amazing. And it just brings it out. Like, how could I be any, yeah, Joanna, this is absolute Aiki. I just can't even tell you the feeling. And this is down to the microcosmic level, right? It's just too much. There's, talk about an Aiki feeling. That's just like all there is. All I want to do is just hold her and love her and be one with her and be tender with her and be sure she's okay. And, just every little thing about her. And just to see her kind of walk down the hall, or, it's just too much. This is pure Aiki in terms of oneness and love and compassion and empathy and care. And what can you do? And just feeling like the oneness of life with this tiny little microcosmic creature is just incredible. So I wanted to bring it down to that level as well. And sort of this uke nage feeling. What if we could be in this totally tender place and knowing how one we are and one all life is, would be, this is just the perfect feeling for me of Aiki, uke nage. And who's uke nage here? Who's leading who? And it's just an amazing thing. So just want to share that.
You may be surprised how much I can relate to that, because I've just got 2 kittens at the moment, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay, so have we nailed it?
Yeah, I want to say one other thing. So I learned when I was 5 years old in Sunday school, which I hated, because we were supposed to draw God as a man, or literally we're supposed to draw God as an old man in the sky. And I literally ran screaming out of my Sunday school going like, I knew then that that's not what God was, and it really annoyed me. But anyways, what do I want to tell you about that? I just lost my point. God, okay. So I learned that it's taught in Judaism as the quote unquote watchword of our faith. And the watchword of our faith is Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And it's actually a beautiful prayer and the Shema, you know, and the way we chant it. And it's a beautiful thing. It's the heart of like every prayer service in Hebrew. And even if you don't know Hebrew and you're some totally Reformed American Jew, you can say that in Hebrew. It's a really big deal, the Shema, Hear, O Israel. But what lately I'm sort of an iconoclast, right? Or I don't know, I just have to question everything. And I have changed that prayer. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. Or the God is one. It's like the Lord our God. It says Adonai Eloheinu, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And it's like, that's the whole thing, you know, our God, my God, not your God. Like, what's that all about? And that just, you know, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is, it says actually, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. But it's like, not our God. Like, I just want to cut out that whole little phrase and just say, Shema Yisrael Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. That's it, you know? And like I said, it's not something you can question or would begin to like alter the you know, Hebrew prayer it's so like this. But I really think we should drop out that part about, you know, this is our God. How's it our God and the Lord is one? It's like, my God, it's like ridiculous. So just forget all the rest. Just hear everybody in the whole world, you know, God is one, or whatever you conceive of as God, but it's one, or one is God. I mean, however you want to say that. But, and I think that's kind of what O Sensei was saying when it was, you know, asked to him, is your Aikido religion? He's like, no, my Aikido completes all religions in that sense. It's getting this oneness of the whole universe, of which our universe is one part of all, you know, one of all the universe.
Jamie, I think you're making a slight logical mistake. To say Adonai Eloheinu does not mean that the same God can't belong to everybody. It just means the one we're talking to. And if there's only one and everybody talks to him, they could all say he's ours and mean it.
The way in Hebrew is kind of possessive. Adonai Eloheinu, God is our God. And it's got a possessiveness to it that I feel is kind of divisive.
Okay, we may be going down a rabbit hole here. So all I will simply.
Then we just get back to this. We get back to Kismet, right? That's all you want to ever get back to is this, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm just going to say that you surprised me. It wasn't the hour that I found slightly difficult. It was the Lord. I thought you were going to say, well, that's sexist.
For God. I mean, that's how it's translated. God. I don't like the word the Lord too much either.
I didn't think you would.
You know, whatever. Yeah.
Finn, go on.
But I will speak to that point though.
Okay.
The Lord, it actually, that is the translation pretty much. And the Lord has this whole something reigning over us, which I'm not on that, you know, and that's what Lord kind of is, right? And you lord things over somebody. And so that's why I'm not too into the word Lord.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Finn.
Sorry, my synapses are twitching again. There's so much insightful thought and provocations in a good way, but so lots of catching up through. But just thinking, I'm thinking of it as an intelligence, you know, the multiple intelligences and emotional intelligence, all the different kinds of intelligence. And intelligence for me is I understand it as sort of connecting things. So this comes back to this idea of connection. And what Jamie was saying, you know, there's a lot to learn from breaking things down, analyzing, classifying things, comparing things. But then the more you break things down, the more you need to unify them again. And I just wondered if that was helpful to think for other people as well.
I don't know, because intelligence to me can be used in good ways and bad ways, of course.
Of course, yeah.
What do others think? Hugh, you're being remarkably quiet tonight. Yes, you're muted, and you'll stay quiet while you're muted.
No, no,
I
no.
love what you
Fir-
wrote, Hugh.
First
Go
of all,
for
I
it.
was just writing in the chat box,
Go for it.
which is the phrase that God is on our side, an often quoted phrase
Oh my
on
God,
both
yes.
or all sides of a battle. So it's can be used politically and in other ways. And the other reason I was keeping it quiet is I know Joanna had her hand up for about 10 minutes, but I will just put an offer to you if you want to. We've had some great definitions from O Sensei and others. I do have one more if you're interested, which is from Tohei Sensei's little book of key sayings. If it doesn't go off tangent, and this part is where he's talking about the essence of key.
Yeah,
but I think it ties in something, and the English translation is pretty good, but let's see if it confuses people. We begin with the number one in counting all things. It is impossible that this one can ever be reduced to zero, because just as something cannot be made from nothing, one cannot be made from zero. Key is like the number one. Key is formed from infinitely small particles, smaller than an atom. The universal key, condensed, becomes an individual, which in turn, condensed, becomes the one point in the lower abdomen, which in turn, infinitely condensed, never becomes zero, but becomes one with the universe. Thus, we understand the essence of key. Blimey, says Clayton. What do you have to read that for? Oh, well, just in case.
I think it's, I mean, why wouldn't you want to hear from one of the masters? I think it's easy to say, well, at the end of the day, what does all that mean? It's one of those phrases, it sounds incredibly wise, but when you actually pull it apart, I bet Paul's pulling it apart now, thinking, what on earth does that mean?
Actually, the thing that I'm thinking is harmony, key, any of these terms are a term for an experience in the body. And if somebody asks me to define them, I don't use words. I say, stand up, let's do this exercise. What do you feel now? That's what I meant. So I don't like words, believe it or not.
So, Sean, there were many iterations of O Sensei's Aikido. You know, it started off in quite a martial way, and it became something else by his death. At what point did it become this sort of sense of love?
Well, to me, I mean that's a history question. I mean, I think that it is.
I'll tell you why I ask it. So, at what point do we start taking the evidence of his words seriously? Do we take everything he ever said, or is it only the last few years that we should take any account of?
That's a decision for each person to make.
Good question.
Heart of hearts, right? I can't tell anyone.
No, of course you can't.
Myself, I look at mostly his post-war Aikido and his post-war lectures. There are times in his post-war lectures where he is effectively saying, the way we were doing things before, we have to do it completely differently, right? We can't do it that way anymore.
There was kind of a division. There was kind of a point where he started to evolve with this new line of thinking.
Yeah. And he also explicitly said sometimes, we can't do it that way anymore. So before the war, he talked a lot about the sword, sort of making yourself a manifestation of the sword and all this sort of stuff. And in his post-war lectures, he has a line where he says, in a sense, we deal with evil not with the sword, but with the breath of faith. And we can wonder what that means later. But he's essentially saying, all that sword stuff, that's not the way anymore.
Let's take that one stage further. So lots of people, when you think about Aikido and you see the big discussions on Facebook, etc., they get very upset and say, well, where did you get that idea from? You can't find anything backing that up with what O Sensei said. Is it for me, I think Aikido is an evolution. I don't have to go back to the source to believe what I want to believe. I think it comes from the source. But I've taken it in my own direction, and who's to say that I can't? And who's to say it's not Aikido?
Yeah, well, that's a very difficult question, right? Who's to say what Aikido is, what Aikido isn't, right? You have to sort of come at it with your own answer, and you can only respect other people for the answer that they make in their own hearts. But if we say that Aikido is what O Sensei did, and it is what he said it is, then this notion of Aikido, evolves and changes, takes on a very sort of special meaning, right? The actual Aiki that he's talking about doesn't change, right? The fact that the Aiki that we care about is not the Aiki of other traditions, but the Aiki that O Sensei said, the Aiki of unifying, becoming one with the fundamental key of creation, of the unfolding of the universe, that which does the evolution of the universe, to borrow some of his phrases, and that the goal is to, say, accomplish one's tenmei, right? Like to
Better say what tenmei means. Doesn't mean anything to me.
Tenmei is often translated as heavenly mission or universal mission, but remember that heaven in this case is one's own internal realm, right? Like it's the selfless light existing deep within oneself, right? Okay. And so one's mission, the goal of Aikido, right, is to be a compass to help one accomplish one's tenmei, which is to say, to exist completely as a pure expression of the unfolding of Dai-I, the great love which sustains all things.
I'm pleased to say that speaks to me, Sean.
Oh, good. Good. Right. So if we have that as our foundation, like that doesn't change or evolve. That's what O Sensei said the art was. But the expressions, right, the manifestations, what gets birthed, what gets born from this Aiki in any given situation, that changes, right? That evolves, of course, right? O Sensei talks about, every day, you cast off the old forms like a tattered old, garment, and you clothe yourself in new forms, right? Because it's all about going through that Aiki, which then gives birth to things. And that giving birth is takemusu. Right? I mean, like he says this explicitly.
Yeah, it's a constant evolution, isn't it? It didn't stop just because he stopped. Finn, yeah. Do you want to come in here?
Well, Quentin, I think you have a great question about what part of, or what era of O Sensei's Aikido itself, and writings or thought, philosophy, do we sort of follow the most? And is it different from his earlier days to later? And it does seem to be a difference, which in a sense is to say he evolved and we can evolve and Aikido can evolve. And I think, those of us a little on the older side have noticed that we evolve. we seem to be evolving from when we started. And it seemed that evolution seems to go from the more physical to physical and energetic and maybe spiritual or philosophical, or, as the physical gets a little less able, shall we say. So that's interesting. The other part is a lot of people have been bringing up these days that O Sensei was quite a nationalist, a Japanese nationalist. So as much as he was a universalist, it was like, okay, well, under Japanese rule of the world, and I don't know where I'm not sure. I can't say I've studied enough to know where he got to with his nationalism, if that also evolved in the ways that we like to at least project onto his thinking. And that nationalism was not necessarily the kind of universalism that we are.
Yeah, it is one of
feel more inclined to subscribe to. Yeah,
it's definitely one of the things that comes up, and maybe Sean can shed some wisdom. But I do want to come back to Finn first, and then I'd like to come back to you, Sean, and see if you read anything that gives any evidence on that.
That speaks to me that we all have our blind spots or our prejudices or our particular worldviews, and that's why we need each other to counterbalance. But I'm thinking that I might write my Wikipedia research, but the character for Ki is a pot of steam with a lid on. So just as the ability to cook and to transform raw food into cooked is a pretty fundamental concept and leads to human evolution. Surely about their infinite variety of cuisines. Surely there's fundamental principles, and we are free to, we're duty bound perhaps to live that spirit, and that spirit can be expressed in religion or Aikido, or but that's maybe a fundamental human need as well.
So what I like about you, Finn, is, I mean, your experience on the mat is not that great, is it? It's not that great, and your grade is not that high. Not that that's important at all, but you bring wisdom like that to the party. I think it's wonderful because, yeah, it's just great. Wonderful. Thank you. Sean, can you add anything on what Jamie was saying about the history of O Sensei's sort of political views in particular?
Yeah, I completely agree with Jamie Sensei that O Sensei's politics are not as we often assume they are. He, for instance, says in an interview, democracy is the emperor, right? And he did not believe in a egalitarian sense of democracy the way that we understand it. For him, democracy was everyone doing their role in society and gathering around a great person. It was very hierarchical. And you can choose to agree with that or not, right? And you can even look at his goal. I mean, a lot of his sort of universal goals, right? So he talks about, it's necessary to engage in, shugyo and work for the establishment of the universal nation, or for a nation under heaven, right? You can look at this as a sort of spiritualizing of the imperial ambitions of Imperial Japan, right? I mean, the idea of like going around and sort of Japan being the spiritual leader of the world, right? And he talks about Japan being the spiritual leader of the world. There are ways to interpret this which are not through imperial ambitions, right? As we need to be an example, right, that people can look to, right? And that's a very healthy sort of self-responsibility kind of perspective. But there's also ways to look at it.
And that's a perfect example of how I think conceivably Aikido's moved on. There are plenty of people who say, well, the hierarchy isn't particularly helpful. We need more democracy. We need equality across all people, wherever they come from, whatever their religion, whatever their sexual views, whatever their political views, whatever it is that divides us, really. Let's kind of all work together. We've all got an equal voice here. Yeah.
I have one tiny point about sort of like, which era of O Sensei do we look to? I mean, if you go back to the 30s, was it 1930s, I think 30, maybe 36, 37, whenever he published Budo, right? He says that, whenever, when you train, kami should be first and foremost in your mind. And if you're an instructor, you must not fail to speak of Budo in terms of kami, right? We could take that seriously, right? All these people who say, oh, the pre-war, much more martial. And here he says in 35 or 37, right? Like, you must not fail to speak in terms of kami. And when you train, you must have kami first and foremost in your mind. That's the thing that you're concentrated on.
Okay. So what's your translation of kami for the everyday person who has no concept of what kami is?
There are so many different symbols that he uses in overlapping ways. If you don't like kami, I have recently been using something like the vital emptiness from which we are unfolding.
Okay. Can we come up with something more mundane for an average person on the street here?
I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it, right? If you want to look at it from a sort of everyday Shinto perspective, right? you know, you can talk about the mythical interpretations of kami, but of course, lots of people have difficulty really connecting to that, right? If you talk about, you know, the various sort of personalized kami, you know, Ame no Minaku Nushi no Kami-sama Sarute Hiko no Kami, right?
And I don't want to go there because I don't think that means anything to
Yeah, exactly. So you have to look at, okay, well, kami also operates within Shinto as a sort of pantheistic kind of animistic
So what are
levels.
they representative of, the kami? To me, that would be universal laws, perhaps. Different aspects of universal laws, or presentations of universal laws.
I mean, you could say, yeah, the workings of nature, right? Or the movements and workings of nature. I've had this explanation given to me by some students of O Sensei.
Okay.
But I asked them, like, actually, like, you know, is this the same as like physics and you know, the laws? And they say, you know, like, oh, you know, it's a little different. So, you know, it's framed in terms of, you could frame the physical laws in terms of, you know, kami no keirin, right? Like the governance or administration of kami. But the kami themselves are something wondrous, something which inspires awe, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I think probably the workings of the universe should inspire awe. That seems good to me.
Yeah, but I mean, like, electromagnetism by itself, like, you know, is an abstract theory, right? I mean, you know, yes, okay, it describes the world, and it's kind of, it's very impressive that it describes the world so accurately, right? But I don't know. To me, the physical laws, at least as you know, revolutionized by, you know, in the, sort of the Newtonian revolution, right? Feel very different from the sense of kami or kami no keirin. It feels much more like the pre-Newtonian sort of understanding to me. I mean, if you're familiar with the history of the sort of physics.
I suspect not as much as you are, but vague. Yeah, I understand sort of how thoughts evolve. Molly, you've been really quiet tonight. Hoping you're going to offer us something good now. Oh, you're muted though.
Oh, I've just been listening. You know, for me, I just find Aiki in everything, you know, and I look at the way leaves move in the wind, the way water moves in a lake or in a stream or around rocks, or how I feel connected to everything. I feel like my cellular matter is just denser than what's right here. I'm like a collected form. And nature, so when I travel back to where I lived for 40 years, literally trees will say to me, it's been a long time since I've seen you. I mean, there is a conversation that goes on for me with pretty much everything, from the frog that I, you know, uncover when I move a pot to a plant that I can hear calling me for water. So I just don't feel any kind of separation. So if, you know, like when I'm in a room full of people and we're all doing Aikido, I feel connected to all of them. And yes, there's something that we are interrelating next to each, you know, up close and personal, but the whole field is general. I feel the entire field of the room.
Right.
And the walls talk. I mean, you know, Jamie, when you said the thing about, you know, running out of your theological training when you were a little kid, right? And you just wanted to run. I am right there, because the adults would go around, they'd be talking about the angels and this and that, but it really became very clear to me they didn't believe it. I had a relationship with, I don't know, you want to call it disembodied energy or whatever you want, from the get-go. And so they were constantly making these separations, and I didn't like it. And it led me to not care for most of the adults that were teaching all this stuff.
Let me ask a question then of everybody. How does Aiki inform your Aikido? Does it play any part in the way you practice?
Totally. I mean,
Yeah.
if I embody Aiki, I mean, if I just look at the human body and how it functions, right on down to every little teeny tiny quirk and particle, it's pretty amazing to me. So where's the separation? I can identify there's a liver and there's this, but all the cohesive functioning is phenomenal. And Aiki is what I bring within myself to where we are right now. I don't, it's not like something a mantle I pick up and put on.
Sure.
Just to go back to running out of, Sunday school, right? At 5 years old. I write about this stuff in my book, writing about energy. A few years later, we were taught that God, not just this old man, this guy with a great beard, but that God is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. And those words were a little big, but you know what? I've come back to it through Aikido. God is omni, energy is omni. It's omnipresent. It's everywhere always. And omniscient is that all-knowing, is the intelligence of life energy through the universe, and omnipotent, all-powerful, which I think O Sensei was really demonstrating and helping us demonstrate through Aikido. It's one of the things I love doing with in my corporate trainings or with my golfers, is that, this is powerful. Peace is powerful. Yeah, it's more powerful. Like, I'll hit the ball farther with Aiki and this, centered, grounded, balanced breath and, kukyo power compared to, muscle power, upper body power, force power. And that's true in business. That's true in leadership. That's true in parenting. You order your kid around and yell at them compared to it doesn't mean you can't be assertive, but, Terry Dobson giving in to get your way, all this sort of thing, is that there's an omnipotence. There's something all powerful. There's all powerful about love. Look at this little blind thing. It's just like, here we are. She's got me, man. She's got all power in the world here. And, love is the most powerful energy in the universe, all that kind of thing. So, that kind of brought me back to, you can or cannot call it God. It doesn't matter. But those qualities of the omni qualities, I would say, and I consider them Aiki omni qualities. And definitely that's one of the things I love so much about practicing Aikido. One of the things I love about, I got to play golf at 6:30 this morning, and talk about Aiki. I was playing with a good friend of mine. He's 75. He just shot his age. And we were just like, our drives were next to each other. This on practically every hole. It was like astounding. It was like, how could they be the same the whole time? He would tee off and I just hit it right where he hit it, and we'd be within 2 to 5, 10 yards of each other, and same direction. We were like hitting from the same place the whole time. It was like a sync. We were really synced up, and it was such a cool feeling. So I think that's that syncness. But so I just offer that kind of idea. That's when I kind of stopped running out of there. Well, the omni thing kind of got me.
Hugh's put in the chat, is it practical to de-link Aiki from Do? And I do think I'll throw that out there, because it's the word Aikido seems to mean something different to Aiki on its own. So
You
what does
could
it
say
mean when
that.
we add the word
Well,
do?
I like the
say that-
do, the do part of it. We need to do Aiki.
You could say that Aikido is the way of Aiki.
Yeah, and I'd be happy with that. So are we? Does Aiki do we have to have peace and love in Aiki? Those sort of emotional or concepts in there. Can there be Aiki without those two bits being in there?
Wow.
It depends what you mean by Aiki.
Hmm.
That's what we're here to talk about, Paul.
I think those are components of Aiki. I don't think we can drop them out.
Who's
also
going to go on, Sean?
It also depends on what you mean by, say, love, right? You know, the love, the love of that O Sensei is talking about is not the like, oh, I love you, you love her, right? She hates my guts, right? Like, you know, it's not a personal affection, right? The love that O Sensei is talking about is the love which sustains and protects all things, right? Again, it's just another symbol for Su. You know, it's another symbol for Ichigen, the one source, right? Like, it's another symbol for this. You know, like, you know, heaven gets used this way. Sensei said that Aiki is becoming completely resonating or echoing with heaven, right? That's another definition of Aiki that O Sensei gave. You know, so there's another symbol like this. So as long as we understand which love we're talking about, right, and which Aiki we're talking about,
Sure.
right, then we can answer.
So the first love you were talking about, that I love you, you hate me kind of thing, it definitely relates to the bigger sense of love that you just described. What O Sensei mean, it's part of that, but it's more all-encompassing. I mean, if we truly love, we shouldn't hate anything, should we? If we're at peace with ourselves, then there's no need to hate anything. There are things we don't have to agree with, but we don't have to hate them. There are more positive responses to that, perhaps. Molly, you're shaking your head.
Hate is an active. You have to actively participate in being able to do that kind of.
Yeah, so we're always perhaps an aspect of Aiki is that you're always putting a positive foot forward. You're always looking to resolve things in a positive way. Are we happy with that?
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets back to that you started with unity today, yeah? I mean, when I try to describe, you know, AI, that character, not that I'm a great, have that great knowledge of Chinese and Japanese, but from what I understand, that kanji means love, but what's love, right? So that's a big question, that's what we're on. But there's something about this unifying, this harmonizing, this coming together, this joining, this synchronizing, this blending, this becoming one, this, and in that sense, affection, you know, that affectionate, empathetic coming together. So, you know, and it can include affectionate love, romantic love, that kind of love. It's a heart, right? And that's about the heart hara. Yeah.
Yeah. Finn, did you want to add anything, or were you just feeling it in your heart?
Joanna's got her hand up.
Joanna.
Yes. Finally, I was thinking about a couple of things that we have energies, just like how Nado says it on his classes. We have pushes and too much positive, active, too much receptive. And sometimes, actually, most of the times, those energies are kind of unbalanced. So how can we become softer inside to try to reach this balance? Just like looking at this dog on Jamie's lap, it's just like I'm melted, completely melted inside. So if I need to make a phone call right now, which would be very hard for me, which would make me more upset, and I remember of that dog, I said, oh, I have some softener inside. So I think it's that part of the Aiki that we need to do. So the do is part of this. So how do we do and do this Aiki inside of us to get harmonized inside of us, and then to get harmonized to other people and other situations. So I don't know, I think it's part of this the kami that you don't, I don't know if you work with kami or not, Quentin, but I really think you do, because if you look at our cats and you just smile inside, and there is the Amaterasu Okami, which is the sun goddess, and which is the smile of the heart. And if you are very stressed and then you get your kittens on your lap, you have Oharaido no Kami, which is the purification. It cleans you. And the last one, it's Ame no Minakanushi no Kami, which is the center one. If you are too spread out and then you look at your cat, you just point it to that center. So it's the nature, and you could be walking on the street and look at a flower, or look at something that connects you to these, I don't know, subtle energies or forces.
Sure.
And I don't know, I like when some people says it's the Aiki Kami, and it's everything together. It's just more forces that we can use for ourselves. So it's part of there was that session that Patrick invited, remember of something that you really like that you eat, and then I remember my tiramisu. I use that till today when I'm in a rough situation. I think, yes, I'm eating a tiramisu, and then it gets less worse or less hard or less compression, less pressure. And I don't know, it's part of picking up that menu of things that helps using more Aiki than to do or do whatever.
So from what you've just said, we're always falling out of balance, and having ways of getting back into balance and being close to balance is where we need to be. We have our natural tendencies to be too assertive or too giving, and we need to develop all those responses and come up with the appropriate response for the situation. So there are times to be assertive and time to be more back off. And it's just kind of, that's to me part of Aiki, knowing what to do when, but having all the responses possible to deal with the situation. And that's kind of the development, learning to use all these tools at our disposal.
I'm afraid I have to go. We have to go, but this has been fabulous.
Yeah, well,
thank you, everybody. Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Thank you, Jamie.
Want to say goodbye?
Just leave the dog, Jamie. Just leave the dog.
Is it? She's
Yeah,
got a great
touchstone.
name. I know, you just want Kismet. Isn't that a great name? Kismet, Kizzy. Yeah. Well, just remember Kismet, and she'll answer. That answers all of these questions today, doesn't it?
She's brought a lot to the session.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, everybody.
All
See you
right,
soon. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I haven't called on you. Would you like to bring us some wisdom? How's it seeming, all of this from Kenya?
Yeah, I'm just quiet listening and learning a lot. I don't have much to say. I've been quite away. It has been a hectic moment here.
Oh, we're very happy to see you. And I was just going to call Errol on there, but he's just disappeared. He obviously knew I was going to hook him in. Vitali, you always say at the end of the session, I had so much to say, but I just didn't know when to say it. So here's your moment.
Okay. Anyway, what I want to say is key is everywhere. And I would say it flows through everybody, and we're just a reflection of it. And so whatever we see in the person, how we feel that person, how we accept that flow of another person or anything, whatever we touch. So that's the way how we transfer it and how we feel and how we accept it. So that's how I feel that. So it can be love, it can be hate, but it's not the way how you transfer it in yourself, inside.
Okay, thank you for that. Errol, time to throw some wisdom.
I've always, when I come to Aiki, I tend to get lost in the philosophy of it, and we get really sort of up in the air, and it becomes so theoretical, it's pretty much impractical. I always like to separate between practicing and the philosophy. And I know from the Jewish perspective, when it comes to ideas of oneness and God's unity, they usually say, put that aside because that will come by the grace of God. And all you can do is work on the practical elements and do that. And if you're lucky and your journey is correct, you'll get there. And if not, then you've just got the journey that you've enjoyed. And that's usually the way I look at Aiki and all these things. It's philosophy, it's a whole lot of different things, but at a certain point, we sort of have to put it aside and say, it's really impractical and doesn't really help me with my keto, and I have to get back to the basics. And if I do the basics correctly, I will get there. But, you know.
Well, I think this tonight's session has certainly proved that you can end up with just huge ideas that for some it's a struggle to get. I will come back to you, Sean, but Errol, I'm interested to know how, even at a low base level perhaps, how the idea of Aiki informs the way you practice your technique.
For example, I always, whenever I'm doing techniques, I try to be as soft as possible, but at the same time strong. So I'll take techniques, I'll do physical exercises that will promote those qualities. And I don't really worry about the oneness of the universe. When I'm doing Aikido, I'm really concentrating on some more down-to-earth technique, softness, flexibility, movement, feeling, and having faith in the technique that they will get me to an understanding, and maybe the understanding will never be verbalized, but somebody will just turn around to me and say, oh, wow, you're really, you know, you're really unified. And I'll say, oh, okay.
When you feel you've really nailed a technique, so it works as good, and we get those rare moments where you think, wow, that was good. What's the feeling inside?
My feeling inside is that I just did it by myself. And like I did a technique and Uke moved and I moved, but I wasn't really aware of Uke at all. And like we just moved together. And that's happened to me quite a few times. And you know, when it happens, you sort of say wonderful. The minute you say wonderful and you think about teaching it, it's gone. So I don't think about it. I just sort of do it. And somebody says, wow, you did it really well. And I'll just shrug and say, yeah, I guess, and move on, because the less you think about it, the closer you get to it, kind of thing. And the more you try to actually quantify it, define it, pin it to one place, it becomes not there.
You have to kind of be it, don't you? Sean, did you want to throw something in?
Yeah, I really agree with Errol that there's a huge tendency to get really abstract and really out there. You know, oh, the movements of the universe. You know, the you know, everything all together. You know, the vast wondrous heart of Kami. But I think this is really where you know, this is the responsibility of instructors to have actually read O Sensei and to explain how O Sensei uses these symbols, so that, you know, the high plane of heaven isn't some mystical Japanese Asgard, right, that we have difficulty connecting. No, O Sensei tells us that we ourselves are the high plane of heaven. It is our essence, right? The movements of nature, right, move and are the lived, breathing governance of Kami, and our own essence was made in accord with the governance of Kami. And therefore, the way that we become one with the universe is not going out and getting too, caught up in big ideas, but by, as O Sensei says, building up that special part of ourselves, which is Kami, or heaven, or the high plane of heaven, or Naohi, or Su, or the vast wondrous heart of Kami, or Ichigen, the one source. I mean, take your pick, right? And that because that was made in accordance with the governance of Kami, that which does the unfolding, right, of the changes of the universe, right? That's how you get that. So that yeah, we don't get caught out, right, in sort of these ideas as referring to the vast expanse of the universe. O Sensei gets translated a lot as saying, I am the universe. But there's a couple of ways that he says this. Most commonly, I think, is like watashi sunawachi uchu, which is I, that is to say, the universe. But he also says uchu sonomon watashi, right, which is the I or the self, which is the very thing which is the universe, right? So he's not saying like, like I am some vast, out there being, right? I am the same as that thing which is the very essence of the universe. That's what I am, and I am nothing else. I think that's the responsibility of teachers to explain this, and also how O Sensei gives us the practical instruction for how to do this, because it's all there.
Okay.
Sorry, that's my soapbox.
Well, no, it was a good soapbox to step on. Joe, your hand's up again.
Yes. No, I have kind of a question for more of the future. It's like I was in a seminar back years ago here with Yamada, and there was, I don't know, 400 people on the mat. And I didn't have all of this experience, all of the sharings with you, and also reading just a little bit of O Sensei's principles. So I have never ever tried that before. And I'm wondering, how can we also translate not only from Japanese to English like Sean is doing, but translating from our recent days, from our present, and then from our future. We have a pandemic right now. We have people getting back on the mat. We have places still going on this pandemic. And how can we adapt all of his teachings? And if they are very, I don't know, if they could have subtle meanings, how can we adapt those meanings to our daily life, to our daily practice? And probably, I don't know how many years from now, but in a future seminar with 400 people on the mat that we have never met some of them, how can we use those principles to be in harmony with the technique, with whatever? I don't know, how can we really translate this for our present and then for our next future, next generation? So all of you probably have grabbed more risks than I have before, and also people from all around the world. But how can we really adapt his teachings and also other teachings from our other martial arts, just, I don't know, Tai Chi or others that we could use also to be more enriching today? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to pick that one up because I spent the whole of the last year trying to show you ways in which we can take Aikido off the mat and into daily life. So for me, tied up in Aikido are these wonderful principles, universal laws, which the techniques we practice on the mat are just a metaphor for how you can make these principles work in daily life. And it's up to each of you and me to see that and to start applying these principles wherever you want to in your lives. Probably the more places, the better, because the more you do it, the better the feeling, the more positive your life, the more you will achieve, the more you'll impact other people who will also be more positive, etc., etc. That is the big mission for me, to get this fundamental understanding of basic principles that irrefutably you can show really work powerfully in a physical sense on the mat. But you know, I do verbal Aikido, I do business, I apply these things and they work just as well there. You know, and you know, a lot of you have the iterations the way you take it into your professional practice and you make it work. So it's nothing. We just need more people doing that. We need more people to understand that. Now who got on a soapbox? That was me getting a soapbox. Anything else that anybody wants to add to the session? I think we've gone around the world and indeed out to the universe and back again.
I think you could say that soap springs eternal.
Oh dear. Yeah, okay. I knew I'd slip up on that one. Haha. Okay. Unless anyone wants to add anything, I think I'll call that a day for today. Thanks for your wisdom. Thanks for your contributions. You know, what I love about these sessions is it doesn't really matter where you come from, what your grade is, what your experience is. You all bring wisdom to this conversation, and I thank you all for that. But particularly tonight, I have to thank you, Sean, because of all the work you've done. That really sort of gave us a good foundation for the discussion. So thank you.
My pleasure and my honor.
Okay, have a good week, everybody.
All right, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Quentin.
Hi, everyone.